Assalamu alaikum students, this is Sir Abdul Samad Khan and today we are going to start the new chapter number 7 matrices for grade 10 matriculation. So let's get started. Introduction. Matrix is a Latin word. In mathematics, a matrix is an arrangement of objects, that is numbers or variables, in the form of a rectangular array. Its elements are written within square brackets in a definite order. The matrices were introduced by Arthur Cayley in 1858. For example, if we see, we have given two examples. Matrix A contains 4 elements and matrix B contains 2 elements. So we can also define the definition of matrix like if the elements are combined in a square bracket in the form of rows and columns, so that is also known as the matrix. Number 2, order of matrix. So how can we define the order of matrix? If there are R rows and C columns in a matrix, then the order of that matrix is R by C, and it is read as R by C. For example, if we see, we have given matrix A and it contains 2 elements. So first of all, we need to know that how many rows are there. Actually, there are 2 rows. The first row is that in which 1 appears, and the second row is that in which 2 appears, and there is only 1 column in which 1 and 2 appear. So we can say that the order of this matrix is 2 by 1, as mentioned in this statement as well. Number 3, types of matrix. Basically, there are 2 types of matrices. Number 1 is called the square matrix, and number 2 is known as the rectangular matrix. So what is a square matrix? If the number of rows and the number of columns of any matrix are equal, then the matrix is said to be a square matrix. For example, if we see, we have given 2 matrices, and if we'll talk about the order of this matrix, matrix A, we will come to know that there are 2 rows and 2 columns. First row is that in which 1 and 2 appear, and the second row is that in which 3 and 4 appear. So it means it contains the 2 rows, and first column is that in which 1 and 3 appear, and the second column is that in which 2 and 4 appear. So we can say that the order of matrix is 2 by 2. So 2 by 2 means there are 2 rows and 2 columns, and since both the amount of the rows and columns are same, so that's why we can say matrix A as a square matrix. Similarly, if we see in matrix B, we have given the 9 elements in the arrangement of 3 by 3. There are 3 rows and 3 columns. So basically, whenever any matrix has the same order, you can say have the same number of rows and columns, so that matrix should always be said as the square matrix. Now we are going to learn about the type of the square matrices. The first type of a square matrix is a diagonal matrix. What is a diagonal matrix? A square matrix having all the elements 0 except the elements in the leading diagonal, or it is also known as the principal diagonal, is called a diagonal matrix. For example, we have given 2 examples again. First example is of a square matrix because the order of matrix A is 3 by 3 and the order of matrix B is 2 by 2. So it is confirmed that these 2 matrices are actually the square matrices. First. Secondly, there is a word as leading diagonal. Leading diagonal is called the diagonal which starts from left to right, which move from left to right. This is the leading diagonal. This is the leading diagonal. So basically, any square matrix that contains elements in the leading diagonal, but except the leading diagonal, all the elements should be 0. If these two conditions apply in any of the square matrix, the matrix will become a diagonal matrix. Number 2 category is a scalar matrix. A diagonal matrix having all the elements same in the leading diagonal or the principal diagonal is called a scalar matrix. If we see in these 2 examples, the elements in the leading diagonal are same. The elements of the leading diagonal are same, and the second thing is all the elements except the leading diagonal are 0. So if these 2 conditions will appear in any of the matrices, that matrix is said to be the scalar matrix. Number 3, unit matrix or an identity matrix. It is a pure final condition of the square matrix that whenever a diagonal matrix having all the elements 1 in the leading diagonal, okay, it is just an exceptional condition. It is called a unit or a identity matrix. For example, okay, if we see that in these two examples there is only 1 in the leading diagonal, okay, and all the elements are 0, so basically any square matrix that has only the 1 in the leading diagonal and all the elements except the leading diagonal should be 0, that matrix is actually known as the unit matrix or the identity matrix. Now let us talk about the rectangular matrix. If the number of rows and columns of any matrix are unequal, so the matrix is said to be a rectangular matrix. For example, okay, if we see in these two matrices, the order of matrix A is actually 2 by 1. That means the number of rows and columns are not equal and not same. And the order of matrix B is actually 2 by 3 because it contains 2 rows and 3 columns. So similarly, matrix B also don't have the same number of rows and columns. Okay, so whenever any matrix does not have the same number of rows and columns, it always said to be a rectangular matrix. Now let us learn something about the types of the rectangular matrices. So basically there are two types of rectangular matrices. Number one is called the row matrix. A square matrix having only one row is called a row matrix. Okay, for example, if we see in the example number 1, matrix A contains only one row but there are 2 columns. So order of this matrix is actually 1 by 2. Okay, and of the order of the matrix B is actually 1 by 3, but both the matrix contains only one row. So any matrix that contains only one row is actually known as the row matrix. Number 2, column matrix. A matrix having only one column is called a column matrix. For example, if we see in these examples, the order of matrix A is 2 by 1 and the order of matrix B is 3 by 1. But in both these two matrices, the number of column is only 1. Okay, so whenever any matrix contains only one column, that matrix should always be said as the column matrix. Okay, zero or null matrix. Zero matrix or null matrix can be a rectangular and can be a square. It can be both. Okay, and it can be defined as a matrix having only 0 as its elements is called a zero or a null matrix. For example, if we see in these two examples, matrix A is a square matrix of order 2 by 2 and matrix B is actually the rectangular matrix of order 3 by 1, but in both the cases the elements are only 0. Okay, so this kind of a matrix is known as a null matrix or a zero matrix. Okay, one more thing, transpose of a matrix. What is the transpose of a matrix? If a matrix of any order is given and we change rows into columns and columns into rows, then the resulting matrix is called a transpose of the given matrix. The transpose of a matrix A is denoted as A to the power of T. T means transpose. For example, if we have given matrix A with elements 1, 2 in the first row, 3, 4 in the second row, so transpose means to change the rows into the columns and column into the rows. That means 1 and 2 will become a column and 3, 4 will also become a column. So the condition will become somehow like this. Okay, so the row in matrix A12 is now become a column and the row 3 and 4 is now become a column again. Number 2, 1 and 3 was the column in matrix A and now it is a row, and 2 and 4 was the column in the matrix A and it is now become a row. Okay, so whenever we are going to change the rows into the columns and column to the rows, so the resulting matrix should always be known as the transpose of that matrix. Okay, now equality of a matrix. How can we define that these two matrices or any of the two matrices are equal? Two matrices are said to be equal if their order is same and the corresponding elements are also same. For example, corresponding elements are said to be that if an element is given in the first row and the first column, so the element of the same position is known as the corresponding element. Okay, So if we see in both of these two matrices, the first element which appears in the first row and first column is 5. And if we see in in matrix B, we have given 4 plus 1, which is actually equal to 5. That means these two values are same. Similarly, if we see the second value is 2 and the second value of matrix B is 5 minus 3, which is actually equal to 2. That means the second element is also equal. Similarly, if we see the third element, it is also equal, and the fourth element as well is also equal. So whenever the order of both the matrices are same, and number 2, the corresponding elements should also be same, then the two matrices are said to be equal. Now let us learn how and when we can add and subtract the matrices. We can add and subtract any two matrices if and only if the order of both the matrices are same. For example, if we see, we have given two matrices again. Matrix A have the order 2 by 2 and matrix B also have the order 2 by 2. So we can only add and subtract the matrices when the order of the matrices are same. Keep this in your mind. As matrix A and matrix B both have the orders 2 by 2, so we can add and subtract these two matrices. Okay. Now look at this example, example number 1. It states that simplify if possible. If possible means all the time it is not necessary that both the matrices should always be added or should always be subtracted. Okay. The main thing I have told you that whenever the order of both the matrices are same, then you can only add and subtract those matrices. Okay. Okay, if we see in this example, we have given again two matrices with the same order 2 by 2 and 2 by 2, and then we have asked to find A plus B if possible, and we know that if the orders are same, we can add both the matrices. So the procedure is like that. First of all, we have to put the matrix A, because in sequentially it appears first, and then we have the sign of addition. Then we have matrix B, so we have to put matrix B after that. Okay. The second step is that only the corresponding element will be added in its corresponding element. That means 5 will be added in 1, like this, and 2 will be added in minus 3, 3 will be added in 2 plus 2, and 4 will be added in 4. And finally 5 plus 1 is 6, 3 plus 2 is 5, 4 plus 4 is 8, and now minus plus is minus. So finally if we subtract 2 minus 3, we will get the answer minus 1. So this is our final answer for the addition of these two matrices. Now in example 2, we have asked to find out the difference of these two matrices. Okay. So the same procedure we are going to use over here as well. The corresponding element should be subtracted from its corresponding element, like this. Okay. And when we will subtract 5 minus 1, we will get the answer 4, and 3 minus 2 is 1, and minus minus is plus, so 2 plus 3 will become 5, and 4 minus 4 is 0. So our final answer for this matrix is 4, 5, 1 and 0. This is how can you add and subtract any two matrices. So that's all from today's video. Hopefully you all understand that video, and inshallah we'll meet you in the next lecture with some other topics from the chapter of matrices. So till the next time, thank you so much for watching, and Allah Hafiz.